A 16-year-old boy stands in a Cleveland bookkeeping office, meticulously recording every penny that crosses his desk. His colleagues think he's obsessive. His friends call him cheap. But John Davison Rockefeller sees something they don't. Patterns in the chaos of commerce. Opportunities hiding in plain sight. Within 4 decades, this same boy would control 90% of America's oil, accumulate wealth that would make today's billionaires look like middle-class suburbanites, and reshape the very foundations of modern capitalism. The real question isn't how he did it. It's whether what he built was genius or a monster. Cleveland, 1855. America teeters on the edge of civil war, but young Rockefeller has his eyes fixed on something far more immediate: the ledger books that reveal the heartbeat of American business. While his peers dream of gold rushes and grand adventures, he's discovered something more valuable than any precious metal: information. Every transaction tells a story. Every number whispers secrets about supply, demand, and the delicate dance of profit margins. He doesn't just keep books, he reads them like scripture. The oil fields of Pennsylvania have just erupted into chaos. Colonel Edwin Drake strikes black gold in Titusville, and suddenly every dreamer, schemer, and fortune hunter in America descends on the region like locusts. They call it black gold fever, and it's every bit as manic as the California gold rush that preceded it. Men mortgage their farms, abandon their families, and stake everything on holes in the ground that might yield riches or ruin with equal probability. The smart money says it's a bubble. The smart money is wrong, but not for the reasons anyone expects. Rockefeller watches this madness unfold with the cold calculation of a chess master. While thousands rush to Pennsylvania with shovels and dreams, he sees what they've all missed. The real money isn't in pulling oil from the ground. It's in controlling what happens afterward. Crude petroleum, straight from the earth, is worthless. Refining, transportation, distribution. That's where black sludge transforms into liquid gold. And in 1863, at 24 years old, Rockefeller made the move that would define the next century of American industry. He doesn't buy oil wells, he builds a refinery. The Andrews, Clark & Company refinery rises in Cleveland like a cathedral to commerce, its smokestacks reaching toward heaven while its foundations sink deep into the bedrock of American ambition. Rockefeller's partners think they're in the oil business. They're wrong. Rockefeller knows they're in the control business, and control requires more than just machinery. It demands an understanding of human nature itself. Every competitor is a puzzle to be solved. Every supplier is a relationship to be managed. Every customer is a dependency to be cultivated. Here's where the story takes its first dark turn. Success in the oil business doesn't come from playing fair. It comes from playing smarter, harder, and, when necessary, more ruthlessly than anyone else is willing to go. The Pennsylvania oil fields are drowning in their own success. Too much oil, too many producers, too little coordination. Prices swing wildly, from boom to bust, fortunes made and lost in the span of weeks. It's chaos, and chaos is exactly what Rockefeller has been waiting for. While his competitors fight each other for scraps, Rockefeller begins implementing what he'll later call our plan. It sounds innocent enough, almost collaborative. The reality is something else entirely. He approaches the railroads, the arteries through which oil flows from field to refinery to market. What if, he suggests, instead of charging everyone the same rates, they offered special discounts to their biggest customers? What if those biggest customers could guarantee steady, predictable volumes of business? What if those customers could even help the railroads identify which smaller competitors might be problematic? The railroad executives see the logic immediately. Steady business beats unpredictable business. Big customers are easier to manage than dozens of small ones. And if those big customers happen to drive some of the smaller, more troublesome competitors out of business, well, that's just the natural evolution of industry. This is the moment when John D. Rockefeller stops being just another businessman and transforms into something unprecedented in American history, a force of economic nature. The rebates he negotiates aren't just discounts, they're weapons. For every dollar his competitors pay to ship their oil, Rockefeller pays 70 cents. But the truly diabolical genius goes deeper. Not only does he pay less for his own shipments, but he receives a portion of what his competitors pay for theirs. Their success literally funds his expansion. Consider the psychological warfare of this arrangement. Every barrel of oil a competitor ships makes Rockefeller stronger. Every successful sale by a rival puts money directly into Rockefeller's war chest. It's not just business, it's a systematic transfer of wealth from the many to the one, disguised as free market competition. The competitors don't even know it's happening until it's too late. By 1870, the Standard Oil Company emerges from this strategic cocoon like a predator perfectly adapted to its environment. Rockefeller has assembled not just a company, but an ecosystem, a self-reinforcing network of advantages that grows stronger with every passing day. His refineries are more efficient because they process more oil. His transportation costs are lower because he ships more volume. His information is better because he has more sources. His capital is cheaper because his profits are higher. It's a virtuous cycle for Rockefeller and a death spiral for everyone else. But the most chilling aspect of Rockefeller's rise isn't his business acumen. It's his absolute certainty that what he's doing is righteous. This isn't a man consumed by greed or driven by ego. This is a man who genuinely believes that consolidating the oil industry under his control serves humanity, bringing order to chaos, efficiency to waste, and progress to stagnation. He sleeps soundly at night, confident that history will vindicate his methods because his results speak for themselves. The haunting question that follows every biography, every analysis, every attempt to understand the Rockefeller phenomenon. Was he right? Was the systematic destruction of competition, the manipulation of markets, the concentration of unprecedented power in the hands of a single individual actually the best possible outcome for America? Or was it the moment when capitalism stopped being about competition and started being about conquest? What happens next will provide the answer. And what happens next will reshape not just American business, but the very concept of power itself. Because Rockefeller is about to discover that building an empire is only half the challenge. The other half is surviving what that empire makes you become. The year 1872 arrives like a thunderclap across the American oil industry. Rockefeller has spent the previous 2 years quietly assembling what he calls our plan, but what his competitors will soon recognize as the most sophisticated corporate conquest in human history. The South Improvement Company, a name so innocuous it could belong to a church charity, becomes the vehicle for what amounts to economic warfare disguised as business strategy. Oil producers across Pennsylvania wake up one morning to discover that their shipping costs have doubled overnight, not because of market forces or natural disasters, but because the railroads have suddenly decided that certain customers deserve better treatment than others. Those certain customers? Standard Oil and a handful of carefully selected allies. Everyone else? They can pay full price or find another way to move their oil. There is no other way. The genius of Rockefeller's approach isn't just the rebates. It's the psychological pressure they create. When a competitor's costs suddenly spike by 50% while Rockefeller's drop by 30%, the math becomes brutally simple. They can sell at a loss and slowly bleed to death. Or they can sell to Rockefeller and die quickly but painlessly. Most choose the latter. Those who don't choose it have it chosen for them. Rockefeller reveals the true depth of his strategic thinking. He doesn't just crush his competitors, he absorbs them. Every refinery he acquires comes with its equipment, its customer relationships, its trade secrets, and most importantly, its former owners. Instead of creating enemies, he creates allies. Instead of destroying expertise, he consolidates it. The men who once competed against Standard Oil now work for Standard Oil, bringing with them intimate knowledge of markets, suppliers, and remaining competitors. It's a masterclass in corporate psychology. Former rivals become the most effective evangelists for Rockefeller's vision because they've seen both sides of the equation. They know what it's like to fight Standard Oil, and they know what it's like to join it. The choice, they tell their former peers, isn't really a choice at all. By 1879, Standard Oil controls 90% of America's oil refining capacity. 90%. To understand this dominance, imagine if a single company controlled 90% of today's internet infrastructure, or 90% of the electrical grid, or 90% of the food distribution system. The comparison isn't hyperbole, it's actually understated. Oil in the 1870s was becoming as essential to American life as electricity is today, and Rockefeller owned almost all of it. But raw market share tells only part of the story. The real power of Standard Oil lies in its vertical integration, a concept so revolutionary that most people can't even comprehend what Rockefeller has built. He doesn't just refine oil. He controls the wells that produce it. the pipelines that transport it, the railroads that ship it, the terminals that store it, and the retail outlets that sell it. From the moment crude oil emerges from the ground until it lights a lamp in someone's home, Rockefeller's hand guides every step of the process. This isn't just monopoly, it's something entirely new in human history. Previous monopolies controlled single products or services. Rockefeller has created something unprecedented, a monopoly over an entire economic ecosystem. Every participant in the oil industry, from the roughest wildcatter to the most refined urban retailer, exists at Rockefeller's sufferance. He doesn't just set prices. He defines the very terms under which business can be conducted. The psychological impact of this level of control extends far beyond economics. Rockefeller has become something approaching a force of nature, unpredictable, unstoppable, and utterly indifferent to conventional notions of fairness or competition. Stories spread through business circles like folklore. The competitor who refused to sell and found his customers mysteriously switching to Standard Oil products. The railroad executive who demanded higher rates and discovered that Standard Oil had quietly built its own pipeline network. The politician who criticized monopolistic practices and watched his campaign contributions dry up overnight. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Rockefeller's dominance is how normal he makes it seem. This isn't a wild-eyed robber baron flaunting his wealth and power. This is a soft-spoken Methodist who teaches Sunday school, gives generously to charity, and genuinely believes that his success represents the natural order of things. When critics accuse him of destroying competition, he responds with the patience of a teacher explaining basic arithmetic to a slow student. Competition, he argues, is wasteful. Consolidation is efficient. Efficiency serves the public good. Therefore, his monopoly is actually a public service. The logic is airtight, terrifying, and completely sincere. Meanwhile, the wealth accumulating in Rockefeller's accounts defies comprehension. In 1870, his net worth was approximately $1 million, already a fortune by the standards of the day. By 1880, it has grown to $20 million. By 1890, it approaches $100 million. But these numbers, staggering as they are, fail to capture the true scope of his financial power. Rockefeller doesn't just have money. He has become money, a human embodiment of capital itself. Every barrel of oil sold in America puts money in Rockefeller's pocket. Every lamp lit, every machine lubricated, every industrial process that depends on petroleum products generates revenue that flows, like water seeking its level, toward the Standard Oil treasury. He has achieved something that economists once thought impossible. He has made himself indispensable to the basic functioning of American society. But power on this scale creates its own problems, and by the 1880s, those problems are becoming impossible to ignore. The very success that has made Rockefeller the richest man in America has also made him the most hated. Newspaper editorials denounce him as an enemy of free enterprise. Political cartoonists draw him as an octopus, his tentacles wrapped around the throat of American industry. Reform movements spring up across the country, united by a single demand. Something must be done about Standard Oil. The irony is exquisite. Rockefeller has spent 2 decades arguing that his monopoly serves the public interest, and the public has finally decided to take him at his word. If Standard Oil is truly a public service, then perhaps it should be regulated like one. If Rockefeller's power is truly beneficial to society, then perhaps society should have some say in how that power is exercised. The first serious challenge comes from the state of Ohio, where Standard Oil is officially headquartered. State prosecutors argue that the company has grown beyond the legal authority granted by its original charter. A corporation chartered to refine oil in Ohio has no business controlling pipelines in Pennsylvania, retail outlets in New York, or shipping terminals in California. The legal logic is sound, but it misses the essential point. Standard Oil has evolved beyond the reach of any single state's authority. Rockefeller's response reveals the true sophistication of his strategic thinking. Instead of fighting the legal challenge directly, he simply dissolves Standard Oil of Ohio and reconstitutes the entire empire as the Standard Oil Trust, a new form of corporate organization that exists in a legal gray area between state and federal jurisdiction. The trust structure allows him to maintain centralized control while distributing legal responsibility across dozens of subsidiary companies in different states. It's a masterstroke of legal engineering, But it's also a tacit admission that Standard Oil has become something unprecedented in American law. The trust isn't just a business organization. It's a shadow government, complete with its own territory, its own subjects, and its own rules. Rockefeller has become not just the richest man in America, but something approaching a sovereign power within the American system. Yet even as Rockefeller consolidates his domestic dominance, forces beyond his control are reshaping the global energy landscape. New oil discoveries in Russia and the Dutch East Indies are creating competitors who operate outside his sphere of influence. Technological innovations are making oil extraction more efficient, reducing the barriers to entry that have protected his monopoly. Most ominously, a new generation of entrepreneurs is emerging, men who have studied Rockefeller's methods and are preparing to use them against him. The most dangerous of these challengers isn't even in the oil business yet. Henry Ford is still tinkering with horseless carriages in a Detroit workshop, but his vision of mass-produced automobiles will soon create demand for gasoline that dwarfs anything Rockefeller has imagined. The internal combustion engine is about to transform oil from an industrial commodity into the lifeblood of modern transportation, creating opportunities and challenges that will test even Rockefeller's legendary adaptability. Meanwhile, the political winds are shifting in ways that threaten the very foundations of Rockefeller's empire. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 has given the federal government new weapons to use against monopolistic practices. Progressive politicians are discovering that attacking big business is a reliable path to electoral success. Investigative journalists are beginning to expose the methods that Rockefeller has used to build his empire, turning public opinion against the very practices that have made him successful. The stage is set for the most dramatic reversal in American business history. The man who has spent 3 decades accumulating unprecedented power is about to discover that in a democracy, no empire is permanent, no monopoly is unbreakable, and no amount of wealth can protect you from the consequences of your own success. But first, Rockefeller faces a challenge that no amount of money or strategic brilliance can solve: the simple fact that his success has made him a target for every ambitious politician, crusading journalist, and reform-minded citizen in the country. The very monopoly that has made him invincible in the marketplace has made him vulnerable in the court of public opinion. And in America, public opinion has a way of becoming public policy. The empire that took 30 years to build is about to be dismantled by forces that Rockefeller never saw coming, not because he lacked intelligence or foresight, but because he succeeded too completely for his own good. The beginning of the end arrives not with a bang, but with the scratch of a pen on paper. May 15, 1911. The Supreme Court of the United States delivers its verdict in Standard Oil Company of New Jersey versus United States, and with those words, the most powerful corporate empire in human history officially ceases to exist. Chief Justice Edward White reads the decision with the solemnity of a funeral director. But for Rockefeller, sitting in his study at Pocantico Hills, this isn't a death, it's a resurrection. The court ordered Standard Oil broken into 34 separate companies. 34 pieces of what was once a unified whole, scattered across the American landscape like seeds from a dandelion. The reformers celebrate. The newspapers declare victory for the common man. Politicians take credit for slaying the monopolistic dragon, but they've all missed the essential point. You can't kill an idea by breaking it apart. You can only make it multiply. Within months of the breakup, something extraordinary happens. The individual pieces of Standard Oil, now operating as Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and dozens of other independent companies, begin to thrive in ways that even the original monopoly never achieved. Freed from the burden of maintaining a single, massive organization, each company can focus on what it does best. Competition between the former subsidiaries drives innovation. Stock prices soar, and Rockefeller, who owns shares in all of them, watches his wealth multiply beyond even his own ambitious projections. The irony is so perfect it seems scripted by a cosmic playwright with a taste for dark comedy. The government's attempt to destroy Rockefeller's monopoly has made him richer than the monopoly ever did. By 1913, his net worth approaches $300 million, roughly 3% of the entire American economy. In today's terms, that would make him worth over $600 billion, dwarfing every modern billionaire combined. But wealth on this scale transcends mere money and becomes something else entirely, a kind of gravitational force that bends reality around itself. Rockefeller doesn't just have influence. He has become influence, a living embodiment of the power that capital can wield in a democratic society. When he speaks, markets move. When he invests, industries transform. When he donates, institutions reshape themselves around his vision. And donate he does, with the same systematic thoroughness that once characterized his business conquests. The Rockefeller Foundation, the University of Chicago, the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, Colonial Williamsburg, the restoration of Versailles. Millions upon millions of dollars flowing toward causes that will outlast any individual fortune, creating a legacy that extends far beyond the oil fields of Pennsylvania or the boardrooms of Standard Oil. Yet even as Rockefeller transforms himself from robber baron to philanthropist, the fundamental questions raised by his career refuse to disappear. Has he truly changed? Or has he simply found a more sophisticated way to exercise power? When the Rockefeller Foundation funds public health initiatives, is it genuine altruism or a form of soft imperialism? When Rockefeller money builds universities and hospitals, do those institutions serve the public good, or do they serve Rockefeller interests disguised as public good? The answer, like everything else about Rockefeller, is maddeningly complex. The same man who ruthlessly destroyed competitors also funded the research that led to cures for yellow fever and hookworm. The same fortune built on monopolistic practices also created some of America's most important cultural and educational institutions. The same strategic mind that manipulated markets and corrupted politicians also pioneered systematic approaches to charity that revolutionized philanthropy itself. Perhaps this is Rockefeller's ultimate achievement, not the creation of Standard Oil or the accumulation of unprecedented wealth, but the demonstration that power and virtue, ruthlessness and generosity, destruction and creation can coexist within a single human being without contradiction. He has become a living paradox, a man who embodies both the best and worst possibilities of American capitalism. As the years pass, and Rockefeller ages into his 90s, still sharp, still calculating, still convinced of his own righteousness, the world around him transforms in ways that would have been unimaginable during his rise to power. The automobile revolution turns gasoline from a waste product into liquid gold, vindicating his early investments in refining technology. 2 world wars demonstrate the strategic importance of oil, making energy security a matter of national survival. The rise of petrochemicals creates entirely new industries built on the foundation he laid decades earlier. Every development seems to confirm Rockefeller's original vision, that oil would become the lifeblood of modern civilization, and that whoever controlled oil would control the future itself. The companies born from Standard Oil's breakup, Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and their siblings, grow into multinational giants that dwarf even the original monopoly. They shape foreign policy, influence elections, and wield power that transcends national boundaries. But they also face challenges that Rockefeller never had to confront. Environmental concerns, climate change, the rise of renewable energy, the growing recognition that the fossil fuel economy he helped create might be unsustainable in the long term. The very success of his vision has created problems that threaten to undermine its foundations. When Rockefeller dies in 1937 at the age of 97, he takes with him the last direct link to an era when individual ambition could reshape entire industries, when a single person could accumulate power that rivaled governments, when the line between private enterprise and public authority was still being drawn. His funeral is attended by presidents and paupers, by the beneficiaries of his philanthropy and the descendants of his competitors, by those who see him as a visionary and those who remember him as a villain. The eulogies struggle to capture the full measure of his impact. How do you summarize a life that spans the transformation of America, from an agricultural republic to an industrial empire? How do you weigh the benefits of his innovations against the costs of his methods? How do you judge a man who created both unprecedented prosperity and unprecedented inequality, who advanced both human knowledge and corporate power, who embodied both the promise and the peril of the American dream? But perhaps the most honest assessment comes not from his admirers or his critics, but from the simple recognition that Rockefeller succeeded in ways that transcend conventional measures of success or failure. He didn't just build a business empire. He created a template for how power operates in the modern world. He didn't just accumulate wealth. He demonstrated how wealth can be transformed into influence that outlasts any individual lifetime. He didn't just dominate his era. He shaped the terms on which future eras would be contested. The Rockefeller story isn't just history, it's prophecy. In an age of tech billionaires and global corporations, when individual fortunes can exceed the GDP of entire nations, when private companies wield influence that rivals governments, we're living in the world that John D. Rockefeller created. The methods have evolved, the industries have changed, but the fundamental dynamics remain identical. The concentration of unprecedented power in private hands, the blurring of lines between corporate interests and public policy, the transformation of democratic capitalism into something that looks suspiciously like corporate feudalism. Every time a tech giant acquires a competitor, every time a pharmaceutical company sets life or death drug prices, every time a social media platform shapes political discourse, the ghost of Rockefeller smiles from his grave. He didn't just build Standard Oil. He built the blueprint for corporate dominance that every ambitious entrepreneur has followed ever since. So here's the question that should keep you awake at night. If John D. Rockefeller walked into Silicon Valley tomorrow, would we even recognize him? Or would we mistake him for just another visionary entrepreneur, disrupting industries and creating value, right up until the moment we realized we'd handed him the keys to our entire digital existence? The Rockefellers didn't just get rich, they rewrote the rules of power itself. And those rules are still in play,